Okay, hey, how is everyone doing? Hopefully I have everything set up correctly here. So, yeah, welcome back. It's been a little while. Um, I was sick last time. Went camping and I think I ate something really bad or something like that. I was recovering for a little while there. But I'm back and Paul may join me later, which would be nice to kind of think through these things together. But if yeah, I was just kind of intending this to be a kind of chill stream. We um, we do a lot of C++ in the Express AI world. Maybe not a lot, but there's a non-zero amount of C++ happening, and we also have Java, we have TypeScript, we have React, we have um, Svelte, and Python, of course, and lots of other things kind of like going on. And sometimes it feels like Java is not the best language in the world for hiring people. Sometimes I think it's totally great, but that's because I'm like like a neck beard, Emacs user, old guy. So for me, when I look at things like Quarkus, it's like, yeah, that's perfect. It supports the standards of the things I've been using for a long time, and it has the new features, right? Like the ahead of time compilation, but as a web framework, it works pretty well. Like it exposes the things that I expect. And it is kind of painful when switching to another language and having to deal with there not being a good web framework. I think for Ruby, it's great because like Rails is, not the only web framework in town, but if you need to use a web framework, you just go to Rails and you're good. And then, PHP, it's a lot more complicated. With Python, also complicated. You can either have Flask or you can have something like Django, and there's tons of them. But then in the C# land, everything is like, there's ASP.NET, and there's various ways that ASP.NET can be used. So there's a couple of choices, but they're good choices. You have either you want to do something one way with like server side things, or you do things a different way, like the MVC style, more like Rails. And you have an IDE that's like built around it. All the tooling is there, so it's kind of nice. And the Java side of things, there's a ton of different web frameworks, and nothing like Java's older than the web frameworks. When C# was created, ASP.NET was kind of like one of the first things that they made. So it is what it is. But if you go to like the newer language like Go, or if you go to Rust, or what other, like maybe Crystal or something like that, you kind of have a choice. Like what language are you going to use? What web framework are you going to use? If you need to do things with the web, it's a little bit more complicated. So because of that, I usually choose the things that I know, the things I'm familiar with. So if I need to do things on Windows, I'll go with C# and .NET. But in general, I pick Java because I know that not only is there going to be a web framework there, but there's like a standard one. For me, that's kind of really important. I think Ruby is going to be the same, right? Like you can pick up Ruby 10 years from now, there'll still be Rails and it'll still be up to date and things like that. I think for Java, maybe it won't be called Quarkus anymore, but I can pretty much guarantee that there'll be a Java EE derivative kind of framework there. And I like that. So I also dabbled in Node.js back in the day, and kind of made my own web framework there, like built on top of Express. Like Express was okay, but it didn't do the things it was like too much work. So I made my own web framework on top of Express, and yeah, when I see some of the things in Rust right now, I kind of get that feeling. It's like it's a little too low level. So we're going to be playing with a few frameworks, probably one or two at most. I'm going to try and make a to-do kind of app, or maybe we can mix the AI into it. I have another app that I'm doing for my class, and we might do that instead. It might be a little bit more interesting. But anyway, so the main contender, right, like what I want in a web framework is mainly like Rails. These days things are a little bit complicated because of the front end things. So, I kind of understand why like micro frameworks are perfectly reasonable. But in here, I'm really interested in like, okay, so if I'm going to use like HTML and web components and a database, what can I do with Rust? And can I get something that is about as productive as the Java EE side of things, which means that it has, like Java EE is actually kind of amazing. I should probably show that, like the Java EE book or something like that. What's the book that I want? Java EE book web framework, something like that. I think it used to be on Sun's website, so it might be on Oracle's website. Yeah, like the Java EE tutorial was just really good, like in general, right? There's like the web and validation, dependency injection, you got web services, persistence, messaging, and the security, all that's in like one thing. And I like that. I like that a lot, right? And not only the thing I like about it is not just that, you have these things, but the persistence is kind of done with the dependency and bean validation in mind, right? Like, so all these things are not just kind of different libraries out there, but they're all like, architected to work together. And Rails has that same kind of thing. Every part of it is set to kind of work together, and it's really cool. And yeah, the interesting thing I think about Java EE is it's kind of the front end thing, like the view, because they have JSF, which is interesting. It's interesting, I think, and I think in the Rust world, we're not going to look at just at Rocket, but we're also going to look at Leptos. Leptos is kind of like the only thing that I would say is going above what JSF has brought, right? So JSF is an old-ass technology. And I would say in various ways it's gotten worse recently. But worse, I mean, recently is like, it's a really old thing, right? Like I'm talking about in JSF 1, you had, you could draw, right? Like you had one page, and then you said when there was a success, you go here. When there's an error, you go to another page, and you could have like the whole map of your application. And that was really cool. Like I've always thought that was cool. They got rid of it. And I think that was, I can understand why, right? Like the way it worked wasn't exactly quite what everybody wanted. So it's fine, but still, it was still kind of cool. And I wish they would keep that somehow, like kind of fix it so that when you do a post, it does a redirect and all that stuff, like have that be a thing, but you could still like just get a map of your application on the different pages in it. I thought that was, super cool. But not a lot of people are into visual stuff as I am, as maybe some people have noticed. But anyway, Leptos does something kind of, so to back up, when it comes to JSF, it's a server-side rendering framework, but you have components. So the kind of current style that you have for, like Svelte and React and SPA, other SPA frameworks where, you have components and things like that. That's pretty much how JSF worked, but everything was on the server because, back in the day when these things came out, you really couldn't rely on the browser for too much. And yeah, that's fine. But the cool thing about Leptos is that it's also a component framework, but this Rust is running in the browser through WebAssembly. So very similar to how in the Java world we had Java applets back in the day. And yeah, but this is better, in general. It's like slightly better. It's more built in, whereas applets were like separate. That's the main difference, and that's kind of why they failed. Anyway, as you can see, you can write components in here, and this is running on the browser. And then if you wanted a server-side, or when you need to do like the server-side APIs, you just have like a server and then the route that you want to do it, and then you can do the things, and yeah, you can just return the results. And the cool thing about that is because those are both like they're both compiled, but in like different features, right? So you got the server-side rendering and the client-side rendering, but they're the same code base. And when you use server, it just like comments out this thing essentially, and then just gives you the components. But the classes that you used on the server side are compiled right into your client-side app, just the same. And that's the cool part, because that means that you don't have to like deal with the server-side APIs being up to date with the client-side APIs and making sure that happens. And these days you use OpenAPI to kind of generate these client interfaces. But I always find that OpenAPI's clients are a little annoying to work with. I guess GraphSQL is another kind of thing, but you still got the same kind of problem. With this, when you create a to-do, both your client and server will see the same, objects. Now there's security implications that go into that. So that's going to be an interesting thing to kind of like look into. Definitely want only, the client to know about the DTOs and those kind of things, not specifics of the database. So I'll see how that works. But man, this is like pretty cool. The other thing is Rocket, which is also pretty cool. It looks like your normal Flask type of Flask Rails type of thing. So that'll be interesting to look at as a more traditional way. I think personally at ExpressAI we're going to go with a SvelteKit front end with Rocket in the back end, right? Like kind of traditional type of things, and maybe using GraphQL for tying those two things together. That'll be the interesting thing, or at least that's what I'm thinking. But we'll give Leptos a try today and see how it works. Ooh, that's a good question. So Paranoid Polaroid, which is a great name, has this question: how do you avoid leaking credentials stored in the server-side object? And yeah, that's the thing. I'm not 100% sure. Now, it's one thing to know that you have a database model and it has something. So, but the Rust code is compiled into a WebAssembly kind of binary, right? It's not it's not the source WebAssembly. So in general, people aren't going to know it, but the server side is on the server, so the actual data there is going to be there, and that's kind of really important. But because the classes, if you use it on the client, I'm assuming will be compiled into the client, then they might be able to see that, oh, this is how you implemented your database schema. And that's something that I would rather not expose. So, like if you have a database table and it has a user and a password and a salt, someone might go, oh, using salts, right? And maybe you might expose a little bit too much that you don't want to expose there. It's not that that's not secure per se, right? But just you need to have proper security, but not exposing things is part of that, right? It just means that your attackers have much more work to do to figure things out, and that's always a good thing. It's not going to prevent an attacker from getting in, but then giving them more to do, giving them less information is more secure than giving them all the information, right? But still doesn't protect you. You got to actually implement the thing. And that's a good thing about ActiveX components. Like it's so strange how full circle this entire thing is. And I remember back when people were arguing about WebAssembly back in the day, because essentially ActiveX was the thing that everybody was like, no, we do not want that, right? Like, that's not what we want. You're going to have security issues. It's going to suck. And that's why we shouldn't be doing WebAssembly. We should be doing JavaScript. And it was like that for quite a while. I remember years, maybe 5 years before the kind of WebAssembly kind of really took off, right? Like the WebAssembly camp kind of created their virtual machine language that satisfied enough people. And of course we had Emscripten back in the day, and when Firefox made that fast, people were like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So I think that was the big part of what made people start going into the WebAssembly side of things. But now, like, this stuff is getting pretty mature, and stuff like Leptos is one of very few kind of frameworks that do things in this cool way, right? Like I think in the Scala world there's one thing in the Scala, Laminar, yes. Yeah, so in the Scala there's Laminar, which is also pretty cool. And this is just front end though, right? So still, but like it does compile to JavaScript with Scala.js, and it has the advantage of being able to like convert any Node.js plugin to be called from Scala. So that's another thing to keep in mind with Leptos, is that and this is a thing that kind of happened a lot, right? So this is not my first rodeo of client-side JavaScript frameworks, but the thing that, like, the reason why I'm leaning more towards Rocket and then SvelteKit in the front end is that when you go out of the front end world, you're going to not be able to take advantage of the libraries there. So when you're using Leptos and you need a chart or a calendar, there's like, not a lot of choices, right? You got to find some Rust crate that is built for this stuff, or some binding that helps merge some other framework, and then once you're doing that, this thing goes away, right? Like this Leptos being super fast, like practically vanilla.js speeds, is great, but then applications are complicated. You need like different frameworks or components, and if you want to bring in that component from another framework, now you got to bundle React or Svelte or Vue into the thing and then do that stuff, right? So that's the annoying part. And if that's the case, why not just stick with just Svelte for the entire time, right? Or just Vue, right? So that's why, but still, I'm gonna try it and see what kind of pitfalls I run into. So I've already tried Leptos a little bit, so I'm gonna start with Rocket so that we can be together in my ignorance, I guess. So let's look at the examples. So I like this, right? So having these annotations for stuff, I really like that. Do not like doing this because I don't like specifying things multiple times, right? So I wish I could just specify a module or something or something and then have it automatically discover these things. Because if I'm going to write an annotation to a function and write this, might as well just write it there, right? So yeah. Anyway, I like the parameters, right? Just being able to say name is here and then it gets passed in. That's great. Handling data, a little interesting, but saying that having these strongly typed forms, great. I like that. Mixing it with the name, that's kind of interesting, I guess. Request guards, like having API key, that's cool. And this is how I would expect the form stuff to work, is like, if you have a form, there should be only one per page, but I guess this is a little bit more flexible somehow. And then the responders, like being able to respond in some sort of type is cool. Like strongly typed responders is great. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the launching or like this mounting business. And when I made my Node.js framework, it was just like that. It's a wrapper for this, or just find the things with the annotations and then use that automatically. So anyway, let's get started here and just kind of see how it goes. So let me open up a terminal, and I should have Rust installed. Yeah, 173. I think that's pretty recent. Let's go to the guide. Just go through the quick start. I think that will be the most interesting thing to see here. Okay, so we'll go to my temp directory, my projects, and then I'm going to make an app called Rocket To Do. Yeah, that sounds kind of cool. Okay, and I think I want to do cargo init here. And we will idea this directory. Okay, so it says it can run on stable, which is great. Bin, I think we're set up like that. Double check. But I think that's what we're doing. Okay, and then let's put in this dependency on Rocket. I really don't like, using RC versions of stuff. So that is a big kind of thing. Okay, and then apparently we can do this in main Rust. So let's go to main.rust and replace this with this. Okay, and let's Let's run it. And see if that works. But it's waiting for this to figure out its thing. This is kind of weird that instead of main, you have to use launch. It's a little weird. It's like, why? I think they also have, there's also an upgrade guide I remember seeing. Do that, and then upgrading. It said here somewhere that before you would use Ignite, and now you need to use Launch. And then Ignite has been set to build. I'm not 100% sure why. It'd be nice to know why. I'm guessing it has to do with threads or async, something like that. So it must be like a alias to the Tokyo kind of things. You're taking too long to update that cache. I think I'm going to cancel you. Okay, let's do this and see what it's like. Got to download and compile everything. Let me go to full power mode real quick. Okay, so hopefully that makes things a little bit faster. And yeah, you can see with the 100 degrees Celsius and the 117 watts that this thing's drawing. Oh man, Intel. So let's give that a second to compile. The other thing I like is SQLX. Like, you know, an alternative to using Rocket is sticking with the JVM that I know and love and going with Scala. And there's problems with that. Not everybody's a fan of Scala, not everybody knows it, and you know it's kind of been declining recently. And you really can't tell when they make like major versions, like from 2 to 3, what's going to happen there. But you know, with Play Framework and Anorm, that was pretty good, you know. But SQLX takes it a step further, where you're compiling your queries. And I think that's good. Always a fan of that. Okay, cool. We got Hello World. Crazy font there, but we're Hello Worlding, and that's pretty cool. It'd be quite annoying if all this stuff is just going to be errors and there's nothing that we can do about that. Okay, no, we just got to give IntelliJ a second to clean things up. And that's cool. Okay, so that's good. Let's continue on to the guide and the quick start. Or no, getting started. Okay, so we can return static strings, and that's good, and we can run it. And the lifecycle has the routing and then validation of the request, processing, and then we have response. So that's good. Macro use is what's importing it. So that's interesting. Not really a fan of that so much. And then we mount there, we launch. It's like one thing that I don't get is this mount call, right? So you're giving it this /hello, but then in get you're also doing like /hello, right? It's like, yes, you can do that. Okay. This is the base, right? So we want to. You can have multiple routes on different bases. Okay, that's. Meh. Okay, and then we can do async route. So that's going to be interesting. So you just add async, and then you can await it. And then we do a blocking test by spawn blocking. Okay, cool. Very easy. Not too bad. And doing that will get us those things, segments. Okay, I think we'll go to state, see what we have in state. That's where things get a little bit interesting. So you can create a managed state, and you can incorporate it in there. So that's one way of doing stuff. It's kind of okay. And then you can guard it. You have request local state. I might have to look at that later. And then the database. So this is the main thing I wanted to see. And RocketDB pulls is the asynchronous one. So let's add that. You do RocketDB pools, and then you create a struct to have the database connection. Kind of interesting. I guess so what that means is you can have multiple databases, right? That's something that a lot of frameworks typically leave out sometimes. And then you have this query, and that's cool. Then you fetch one, giving it a pointer to whoa, that's crazy. You give it a mutable reference to a pointer of a DB. That'll be interesting to understand what's going on there. Cool. Looks like it has a migration feature, which is great, and asynchronous. We're going to stick with the asynchronous one, because that would make the most sense. Yeah, that immutable reference star DB, that's an interesting. That is interesting. So you can use a connection type as a request guard to receive an active database connection, right? Or alternatively, use a reference database type to retrieve the entire pool. Doing so does not guarantee a connection is available. I see. Okay, so we got Deadpool, SQLX, MongoDB, and Diesel. So you mean you have 3 drivers. And so your config should look like this. We've got your connections, driver defaults. Okay. So you gotta have driver database features. That's interesting. The templates is another thing I wanted to look at. So you can render template name, and then you pass the context. So this I don't like so much. You can write in handlebars or Terra. I haven't heard of Terra before, but I know what handlebars is. And what is the Terra? It's like Jinja 2. Okay. And then we also have WebSockets. And WebSockets is going to be the interesting one, I think. Box pin async move features. Okay, so that's cool. But I can't say I understand how to set this up. Because does that just go in the cargo tunnel? And then if that goes in the cargo tunnel, then this should go to tasks.db. Let's hopefully try running that and see if that works. And then there was migrations. I was promised migration support. Where is that? There's that part of SQLX. Okay, so I think they want us to do that. SQLX migration. Okay, so SQLX migrate DB migrations, run pool await. That's cool, I guess. And is there any other documentation for the migrate? Is it like a flyway style? Migrate. Ensure migrations table. I'm gonna have to find some examples for this. Okay, so that we launched. Let's do that with the macros and migration on. Okay. You can use SQLX to create and drop a database. You can do SQL migrate add, and then that will add the thing. Okay. Cool. So let's do that, I guess. Now, I just have to say, I do not like this. You know? I don't like having like the need that you have to like install a global command, right? Do not like that. Not one bit. Very much a like a VM kind of guy myself. So, you know, bundler did it right. The Java world kind of didn't care about commands, so they kind of missed out. Man, look at that! Look at that CPU usage. The energy usage. I'm thermally limited to 90 watts right now. I do have to mention how impressive it is that this CPU can reach like 140 watts. I had no idea. And it's part of the reason why, you know, they say that you need to be plugged in to get the most out of your Intel CPU. The reason is the battery cannot supply enough energy to the CPU. But sometimes nor can just plug it in. You need both the battery supplying everything it can, so like 60, 70 watts, and you know, the AC coming in supplying, you know, like 100 watts. Craziness. It's craziness. It's like, it's a lot of power. You can only do it for like a few minutes too. Okay, so doesn't know what the database URL is. Database URL is SQLite / tasks.db. Is that good enough? Yeah, it created it. Cool. And then we'll add a migration, do it the dumb way. So 1, add tables. Cool. Now we have the migrations, add tables. Okay, so it doesn't, it added the thing that I didn't think it was going to add, so that's great. Create table tasks, which has an ID, primary key. And I think we want this to be integer. Yeah, use SQLite. So you got to change the dialect to project SQLite. Cool. And we can also configure the data source for the IDE by doing SQLite. Okay, name tasks.db, tasks.db. Download missing driver files, please. That connection that worked. Yeah, that gives us some gives us a console, which is great. Okay, so we want an ID, and let me open another project that I had before. Okay, so we want the task, which is a text. I should write my SQL in caps like Roman. Create table tasks. We have text, which is not null. Done, which is an integer. Not null, default 0. Have an owner ID. Let's not go that far. Just give it a task done. Maybe a due date. Due date, which is some text. Okay, let's create table if not exists. And do we want users? I think not. I'll just kind of keep some. We have another thing to do anyway. Load cargo changes, sure. Okay, cool. So it says that we need to call this, and that needs to go here somewhere. But I'm not sure. So let's go back to these docs and see if it has an example. That database examples. DB migrations create post table. That's cool, right? And then luckily they did it here. So we got a mount, attach, and run a SQLite. SQLite, that, and then the stage says on ignite, attach. Okay, so this is a controller, so do anything. But we have initdb. So on ignite, we'll call initdb, which executes this and not the migration. It's my disappointed face. Diesel and SQLite. It has a run migrations. What about SQLX? Okay, so on ignite, attach, then run migrations, which causes SQLX and migrate. Run DB. Okay, so this is what we want. Let's do similar thing. I'm not gonna do the staging thing. We don't need to complicate our lives right now. Just need a function. So we'll do run migrations. Rocket, let's import it. Build is reference to rocket build. Okay, and fairing part of rocket. In this DB class, it is impossible to find. DB fetch DB comes from what? X we have, yes, I forgot that. I forgot that part. The documentation did say that we need to have a type for representing the database. So to derive that, we have our SQLite pool called DB. Then we do that, which was here. And we mount that. So first mount, then this wanted to call ad hoc on Ignite. Do we need to do that? Ad hoc, which we can import on Ignite, and next stage, and then we take a rocket and synchronously, do we need to, oh no, we want async. Okay, async. And then we call rocket attach this. This is mainly what we want. I think that's enough. So if we run, get a compile error. No such file or directory. Yes, because it's not db/migrations, it's just migrations. That's pretty cool. And it would do that when it's passed relative to the current file directory currently not supported. You have to do it that way. Okay, cool. So now if we open up our console here, we can select star from tasks. And there's no such table, which does not bode well. Yeah, it does not look like it did the thing. Let's do a debug. Okay, and now give this a restart. What's the problem? Running migration. Okay, so let's do that. That's great. Now, do we see running migration? We have these fairings. And this fairing is not happening. And if we look at this thing's main, it's calling attach stage. Stage returns an ad hoc. I see. Okay. So we need to do. I forgot the name already. We need to call attach. Okay, so now let's do watch. How do I watch with cargo? I'll figure it out later. Okay, failed. Add configuration, missing field URL in DB init. Fairing must be attached prior to using this database. So now we're getting at the, this is annoyingly difficult. Is it just is it that I'm a neckbeard and databases aren't important or migrations aren't important? So people don't build this in, it's kind of built into Ruby. I don't know. So running migration. Okay, so we are running now. That's cool. Then we need to, let me just export this thing. So that we get those. So we are here. And that's pretty much it. The URL. We have the URL defined here. But is this not? Aha. This is database. This is saying SQLite logs. Here, we're just calling it SQLX. So we want to do that. And that still didn't work. Fairing must be attached prior to using the database. Fairing must be attached prior to using the database. Here, calling let's look at here. This DB set there, and we also need to attach DB init. I see. Okay, seems simple enough. And now the error is what's the error now? Attempted to fetch unattached database. Where is it attached? Is this ad hoc important? I mean, it could be. And we attach stage. And it says cannot find list in the scope. Let's get rid of this. Because we don't have a list, we don't have those routes, so that makes sense. And now, yeah, we got the same thing. Okay, so that wasn't too far off. DB init fairing must be attached prior to using the database. What does that mean? It's already 11, so we've been at this for an hour. And we don't have a database up and running. So, yeah. Still, it's DB fetch. DB. Have this ad hoc, creating an on ignite, which we are returning, and then main, using it. Here, there's nothing else. That's afterwards and not important. And the cargo toml. Okay, I'll show that. Diesel seems to have up and downs. I like that. I like that a lot better. That's not super important, but it's better if it works that way. Oh, is there a rocket toml? Okay, so they failed to mention that. So that's where that goes. So you make a new file called rocket.toml. Uppercase. And in there, you have to set this URL to tests.db. It doesn't look like a URL to me. But whatever. And then this must be called SQLX, which it is here. Okay, so that's good. Let's not do that. I'm guessing we can remove that. Okay, so our cargo toml has the dependencies, and then the rocket toml has the configs. Watch. Cargo install watch. Bin install? No. Yeah, never mind. We'll just do it manually. I'll figure that out later. Running rocket to do near exists. Okay, so now we got good things. Have to spell. If you spell correctly, that should work. Cool. Now I go to the console and we do that. We get a table. Cool. We're there. It only took an hour to figure it out. Cool. So that's a thing. And then But what is it like for dealing with what's it like dealing with entities in SQLX? So this thing is an actual to-do list, so that's good. It's R2D2, like the name. Similar to the Java one. And it's using Diesel. And I wanted to use a SQLX. So it's not exactly what I want. Yeah. It's using Diesel. I would like to know how to use SQLX. So you can look at this. We have a post that has the things. So here we can have a struct task. Which is sometimes a problematic name, but hopefully we won't run into too many issues. And we need to have an ID, which we can make an option I64. The task, right? Yeah. Which is a string. Then the done, which is an I64, which I want to be a Boolean, but you know, things. And then a string for the due date. Okay, and then we do our derived push-ups. Let's derive debug so we can see it. Clone, deserialize, probably serialize. And there is a create rocket Serday that we might need. Maybe what did I do wrong with this? Need to import the Serday, I see. Okay, cool. And we can skip the serializing if that's none, which makes sense. That's interesting. Okay, so let's do this kind of thing. So let's get into the meat of the framework. So let's create a post for tasks, right? It's a function create, which will take a mute db connection, db, and a mute task is a JSON of task, right? And then we will return a result created JSON task. So import Rocket DB pools connection. We want to import JSON and import created. Okay, cool. So we'll have our results, which is equal to SQLX query macro, which makes it cool. Select star from tasks. Oh no, this is create. So we want to insert into tasks, task done due date, values, then we'll have question mark, done will be 0, and due date should be null. Okay, and then we will do the task dot task. Do everything. Am I in power save mode? I'm not in power save mode. Ah, right, returning ID. That makes sense, and probably something really nice to have. Okay. Yeah, that kind of sucks that I don't see that, but from the code I can see that there's a mute DB, so that's how we do that, and then we can try collect into something. And we await it. There you go. So yeah, can't see anything. Don't like that. You know, like if this is not actually going to work, might as well use a dynamic language, you know? Okay, now we'll have our task, right? .id is equal to some results first, and then we expect return unable to create task, which could be a thing if we had a what's it called? It could be a problem if there's a constraint, right? So that's probably a thing. And then we OK, create a new, go back to the main location, use the task as the body. Okay, so let's run that. And our result should have 2 arguments, which makes sense for the normal result, but this is a different thing. Okay. Hold on. So there's this result. Okay, so it's just a standard result, but with a very specific thing for the error. There's no JSON in types. This thing using JSON. We want Rocket Serde JSON. Where does that JSON come from? Let's see what cargo run says. Could not find JSON in Serde. Yeah. That's what I thought. Is there a JSON thing here? Where is that JSON thing? Rocket Saturday. Okay, let's use Rocket Saturday. JSON. Use JSON. This is sus. Okay, this is, are they using a macro import? No. Okay, let's go back to the find documentation instead of the examples. Okay, responses. Let's look at the responses, see if it says how we should be doing with JSON responses. I like having this kind of like accepted string and stuff like that. That's kind of cool. And created. That's definitely better. Content type JSON, that makes sense. And can be annotations. Streams. Conversions. JSON, the JSON responder, which is apparently in here. You must enable Rocket's JSON feature. Okay, that. Why would it not have that? I'm not sure. Dependencies. Rocket. And version equals that. Features equals, and now we have a bunch of features that we kind of relied on, I guess. I don't know which the other ones are, so. Saturday JSON. It makes me wonder, do they have GraphQL? That would be kind of cool. Okay, we don't have from request for JSON task. Let me go, did I have that? Yes, that's there. This goes to show, like, and if you are used to Java or C#, it can be really tough to kind of go in this direction. Database URL must be set. Cargo SQLX prepare. Database URL tasks.db. Relative URL without a base. Is that good enough? We'll find out. But this is the magic, right? Like, so why did we have to do that prepare, which is essentially we need, or we want, the compiler to run this in some sort of transaction and then roll it back and fail to compile if I got this wrong, for example. Okay, try collect does not exist. Okay, and what is results? Unknown. If I had try collect, still unknown. It says it's not there, right? Makes sense, but because it doesn't know what this is, I have no way of figuring that out. That sucks. That's like, you know, it's kind of like a lot more dynamic than you'd want. Marker send. Okay, hold on. Let me go back to this. Save. Let's cargo run that. We have first that a stream does not have try collect. Is this a new SQLX thing? So let's do SQLX insert sample Rust returning ID, because that's the main thing we want. So SQLX by example. So query, right? Execute and then wait, insert, bind fetch one. Then we get a row with that. Okay, that makes sense. So if we, instead of fetch whatever, we fetch one, and if we await that, this results should be an I64 tuple. Then I would expect that first so we have results. Well, technically we want this to be an option of I64. Results should be that, essentially, right? Oh, according to the type. But we have a record and not tuple. The reason this, it's doing query as we do that, what happens then? No rules expected. Okay, so this here isn't using a macro, it's just calling query as, and if we run that, values 1. So that's been called like this, insert into ticket name values 1, returning ID, right? Not too bad. Then we bind the task. Can't move it. but we were able to move it before. Okay, let me get rid of this type annotation because I'm not sure if that's the correct type annotation. Okay, it is doing an option of I64. So that, oh, okay, because I'm setting it here. So maybe that's what it is, right? But that's not necessarily what it is. So the trait is not implemented for option I64. If I say this is an I64 tuple, with that expect an option I64, right? So we can do sum result 0. Okay, and that compiles. So now we have this other thing, so the JSON task. So the JSON task comes from here. Struct task Serde. You must implement the serializable and derive, which I think we do. Derive, serialize. Yeah, so we have that. And JSON, and then we use the crate, that thing. So that should do the trick. We don't have it. Let's use the JSON crate. Student serialization example. Let's see if they forgot to mention an important thing. Makes no sense. JSON and JSON, sorry, JSON. Why are they using this lowercase JSON thing? They do not use it. Do we need it? I don't think we do. Okay, so let's do that. Use Rocket Serde JSON, and lowercase JSON. You run it that way. Yeah, it's not used. I don't think it's used here either. JSON. That important here? See, is it important or not? Apparently not. So that, since that is unused, I'll get rid of that. How do we get this JSON task thing happening? I have all sorts of other things. You can do it. Okay, so they're using that JSON as a macro here. That makes sense. That's pretty good. But we want this thing and message is supposed to be just derived serializable and Serde crate. We're using the right Serde. Yeah, we are. I kind of like this. This is a neat feature. Let me just say something like that. Now we can import the sorted JSON. So the JSON value. Yeah, I was right. Neat, right? Unnecessary. That makes sense. No clue. No clue how to fix this error. In terms of what I've seen so far, kind of makes sense. Why do I not? I mean, I think it just means I have to implement a from, but yeah, it doesn't look like you're supposed to. Let me rename this real quick. So let me rename it to do task. This way. Okay. It's not implemented. We don't really care about the lifetime of that. I don't think you can do an underscore like that, right? No, we can't do that either. The trait request outcome is not something you're using. So let's go back to the documentation and see if there was something else noted here. Okay, so let's go back. We want to go to requests. We have dynamic paths. Getting some stuff. We should be getting the body. So we know that the form thing might work, so maybe we can get around it, but possibly not, right? Like if we go instead of JSON, we do form and import that. Does that compile? Or do we have the same error? Oh, we have the same error. Okay. So, private cookies, secret key, format. The format parameter indicates that only JSON will do that, which is correct. The body data, so it must implement the form data trait, and that I could do, right? So the form data I mean, that makes sense, but what we want is the JSON, right? Like we can implement that, but We don't want that. We want JSON. The only condition is that T implements the deserialized trait from Serde, which we do. We derive the Serde, and we have it. Using Rocket's Serde derived re-export requires more effort. So Rocket re-exports those from Serde. But because that macros require annotating with that. Okay, which we do. So that's fine. JSON support requires the JSON flag, which we do. So that's fine too. We don't think we need that lifetime specifier either. Though they are using it. We are using string, so perhaps we just need some sort of lifetime. Do copy on write. Okay. So this, I think I got the idea. Okay, so this, we are using this for the database, right? Like I was mentioning before, we probably want to do DTO, or task DTO, which should do the same things, right? Probably have a lifetime specifier. Our ID is an option I64. We have our task, which is copy on write string view, which it doesn't really have to be, but I get that's fine. Totally fine. Done, which is simple I64, and due dates, which would be copy on the write string with lifetime R. Okay, then instead of this, to do task, we would want a task DTO with some lifetime. You bind the task from that, so that's good. We set the ID from that, but this no longer returns a to-do task, but a task DTO. How does that work? Same difference. Okay. It would have been cool if it would have caught that, although I don't see why it should catch it. There's nothing like special about this from like entity versus the DTO, but that's something I always do in my Java stuff, right? So this would be a task entity representing something in the database, and then this would be the DTO representing something that's coming back and forth, right? Yeah, it is kind of a bit like trying to figure out Haskell types. And I never had this kind of problem with Scala, but it does remind me of like in Play Framework, the JSON thing was annoying, but you know, it wasn't too bad, right? Like that's how you'd parse and that's how you do it. So instead of making a function that does that thing, there was a nice little reads and writes, right? So you can create a new writes location, and then that would give you your JSON object, right? But there is also a simple version of that. So if you used a case class, you could say just that, right? Like not JSON validate, but is it here? Yeah, you have like complex reads and writes, and then that could get, you know, a little interesting when it comes to like dates and stuff, right? But essentially, all this stuff, when you read it and understand it, there was just one thing you wanted to do, this JSON automated mapping, right? You have your case class, then you do JSON reads thing, JSON writes thing, and then you just have those available as implicits. And that was all you needed. And this is the same thing, right? But there's no kind of implicit. There should be an impl, right? So JSON text DTO, right? Like that's what you need to do. But yeah, it's not gonna work. And it's not going to work because you can't do that arbitrarily. I don't think you need to do that. Only traits defined in the current crate. But what I don't, so the thing is, if this was really necessary, would be mentioned, I think, in the yeah, it would be mentioned somewhere in the documentation, but it's not. Now I know what this would have to be, right? We have that JSON macro, right? So it'd be like JSON, and then you would return the thing. I know what you want is the task DTO. Oh yeah, you want a JSON task DTO. So that I think I could do, but I don't think you can define that here, and it shouldn't be. Data food. I mean, I don't have that, but do I need it? Let's do this thing. Okay, that's what I need. Interesting. Interesting. Did it mention that? So I don't think it did. Could be wrong. Body jigsaw. Aha, I think it did. Okay. So that's weird. But yeah, I guess what are you going to do? Right? We can't annotate these things. So, okay, so you just need to specify the name of the thing, and then that will generate the implementation. Okay. 2 hours. We almost have everything we need. Yeah. Okay. And lifetime specifier hopefully works fine. Let's do the rest. So let's get tasks. Format is JSON. No data this time. Async function list as a mutable DB connection. Return a result. Okay. JSON task Beck of task DTO. And our results would be SQLX query. Let's just do the non-special one. Select star from tasks. Fetch all. And wait. It doesn't like the way I want to indent things. That's kind of annoying. We need to pass the mutable pointer. I need to look into what's going on here. It's a little bit I guess it's like we take the reference for the connection and the reference from the DB, and then yeah, it's a little weird. Anyway, so results should be a vec of SQLite row. Now, what I want is is not that. I want a list of DTOs. So let's go back to databases, samples, database example, and look into the SQLX example here. So it tries and collects select ID from posts. It's no good. Okay, so fetch map. Okay. Then we have our row. I'll return row dots. Wait, how does it know the type? Because it's a thing here, or because of the type here? We want to task DTO, the ID is equal to the row ID. task is equal to task dot task. Yeah, it has no idea what I'm doing right now. Not okay. This is the JSON post. If we map record here, we fetch. Yeah, I might not know what's possible. Okay, let's do it exactly what they're doing. So we'll use that ID task done due date from tasks. And our row will change into a JSON task DTO. And the ID is equal to the row ID task is equal to the row.task, which needs to be a string. I have to look at that. Done is equal to task row.done, and then the due date. Due date. Now I don't want to write this stuff. I want to write these things. I don't want to write these things. This is the thing that you don't want to write. This is the thing I do want to write. It's weird. A lot of ORMs, they kind of feel like you don't want to write this thing. I do want to write this thing. This is perfectly fine, right? So we map and then try collect, which I know we're not supposed to have, right? Then we wait that. Okay. Result. Right, that's more or less what it should be. Let's see what the compiler says. Should learn the syntax. That would make life much easier. Okay, JSON vec of task DTO is now type. This thing, which list was result of something, result created. So we don't want okay, we want result JSON. Okay, and the wait occurs there, which is not send. I know some of those words. Format JSON. We might not need that format. Never mind. Feature created by async block is not send. We have our result JSON vec task DTO. This has a result JSON vec by 64 and is generally okay. And then this one, okay, so this gets the IDs. That awaits and then okays it, this returns a JSON post. Okay, so I'm doing this thing, so I can just await this, right? Await, and then okay. Same thing as this. Or should be. Well, I guess I'm not. I'm doing that. Collect, which could be a problem. Post. Collect, wait. Okay, so I can make this not be a JSON. We wait that, then we return okay JSON, and then results. What does the compiler think about that? More or less the same thing. That is interesting. Let's move that and that. Run that again. Async block is not send. What does that mean? No, that wouldn't do anything. The result, so this thing should do the right thing. Result is not send. Await returns. It's a keyword. Question mark will throw the wrong result, which we have here, right? Standard error result. Actually, let me get rid of this. Okay, so that will cause everything to require an error. Let's go to a different example so I can see. Set the JSON example. Or perhaps the to-do example. So if you go task schema, that is kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Okay, so that's all. Delete all main. Okay, so that put get turns a template, so that's not relevant to us. We need the JSON one. Forms. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this get returned just that. That's about it. Maybe we want this because there's either going to be a debug or yeah, an SQLX error. So let me get rid of that again. Okay, so if we don't have this, we say that we're missing the E, and if I use SQLX error as the E in every case, I'll be able to see it. I see. That thing is kind of important. You need to have a way to display that, right? Like if it's sending an error, then we need to wrap it in something that we can see. So that makes sense. And that is kind of cool that you can just define the type and it does that. Await occurs on that. String, whatever. Task PTO from request. Will I just that exist? Wait occurs here on type. The await is here. This was okay, so that's fine. This one is not okay. Same. As it should be. It should be the same. Which is not send. We are missing the collect all. Let's look at that again. Back to the examples, databases, SQLX. There was the collect all here, or the try collect. Is that special? Totally not special. But this is definitely, everything here is a result. Except this one. So we do that, question mark it so that if that fails, you get an SQLX error. And if it doesn't fail, then we want to return JSON of results, which is unknown. Results here is also unknown. Yeah, that's annoying. You can't see anything. It's like no real point to have an IDE if you can't see anything. And the errors are not helpful. Future grid buttons and proc is not same. Let's just look for that on the interwebs and see what it says. This task but I can't see what this is. In the example, this here, we have some title. It's title, Arda title. That is just a string. It has no problem with this not being a copy and write thing. So let's get it. Essentially exact same types. and artifact is R to give you some more space. We need to have the lifetime parameter that does DTO here. It's not static. Okay. And we need to unused parameter. Right. This is unused now, so get rid of that. Means we can get rid of that here. Bunch of run. Okay. This has only one test DTO thing. This has the correct number. SBTO. Okay, so it wasn't a lifetime thing. That's annoying. Non-string text. Where does that come from? Future. Okay, so that's doing that, and that's supposedly working. It is async. This is async. FA result. And this one isn't a macro, so that might make things a little bit different. I guess by not being a macro, we get actual types, which is great. What is this? So let's do that. If we get the try collect, so we fetch. Map. Okay. Why is that not there? It's not there? Future cannot be sent between threads. Try stream. You can import that with this. I see. Yeah, it sucks because it doesn't point to a line of code. But it's also nice that it happens during the compilation and not when you try to do it like you would get with pretty much everything else. that special. Why is it different? If I set it to just do the same thing as this one, I64, snap it to RID, use the exact same query map OK, and try collect. That TriStream X that I really don't get. Get rid of that for now. Database must be or have run an SQLX. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Export database URL is s.db. I guess that's not a URL. So light // feature cannot if it not found. One sec. I didn't mean to call that fetch. I'll just fetch. Essentially the same thing. SQLX query fetch map OK, try collect and await. Yeah, am I doing something different? I shouldn't be. Can I make an empty vec? What happens if I do this? Same difference. But if I don't fail when I wait, if I leave that and just not use it, okay. So we're getting somewhere, at least. How is this any different? Oh, okay. Wait. Unknown field. It's a tuple. What is R? Struct compute is not string map. Okay, so map okay is the problem. Here, for some reason, it's okay. It's in using these special things. Which it is mentioning here. Which I was already using here. But otherwise is actually not used. And makes no difference. Okay, so when we start the compilation, type annotations needed. Don't know what that is. Okay. Why do you not have issue here? No clue. By 64 string 64 string. Now I was happy with that. Remove the await. And that helps me how? It is a stream now. Not a future. If I don't await it, then it's going to be like, hey, what in the world are you talking about? So results is a map OK. But it's expecting something else. Okay. If I try collect, back dot wait question. Okay, what did I do? Makes no sense. Task DTO, ID is R0, task is R1, done is R2, and due date is R3. So it should be a sum. Okay, cool. So if I go here, we don't mount that. So we'll mount index, list, and create. And I guess not found. Okay, can't use not found. I need to figure that out later. Tasks turns me an empty list. Okay, so we're finally there. We can create and list. Let's try the update. Oh, explain what I did to solve the problem and why. Cannot tell you. I'm not sure. Well, essentially, the thing I did was here, I used query as, and that kind of worked. And in here, instead of using the macro, which I think doesn't work, right? Doesn't work. So query as instead, not the macro. And does work. No clue. These ones are using the macro, and they work. So totally not sure. No clue. So anyway, so let's delete ID, delete from tests, or ID is whatever. Let's see if this compiles. It does. This one's using the macro. Why does this one work? And this one doesn't. I have no idea. No clue. There's nothing to make that apparent, I think. Yeah, I have no idea. Was there a put here? Do I want to try the put? I think I will do the put. It should be pretty much like this, but instead of a post, we want to put. We want to make this update, takes JSON and a task, and it returns a JSON task DTO. And we want to update tasks set s is equal to $1, then is equal to $2, and due date to $3. Don't return anything. Find the task dot done and the task dot due date. I'm going to find 3 times. Then we want to execute. And then we return task because it's already a JSON. Okay, what's the problem now? Update, execute. Was there an execute here? We execute alert root TP, do that. Okay, just normal error there. Macro. The macro is different. We want to use these for the macro. And execute. We're not supposed to wait on a fetch and fetch all. I think it's different because we are using the async things here. So Rocket has the synchronous DB library and the async one. The async one is the default. And that's what we're using here. And I'm not sure how that works. Future created by async send. Expected 64. Why do we expect 2 months? We want just that. Temporary values freed and request. Due date is a string. Actually, when you think about it, due date's not supposed to be a string. It should actually be optional, given that, yeah, it's an option. So that will make life a little bit more difficult. And the statement. Yes, we don't need mute. No, we do. We need mute and create. We don't need mute and update, and we don't need mute there. Okay. These references are going to go away. Result is not used here. What we want is, yeah, we can just get rid of this because we don't really want it. That makes sense. And the temporary values. So I thought that was going to be a little iffy, and it was. Should be able to just copy it over. Okay, so that makes sense. And lines up with this update. Let me just double check. This one had a create where it just passed the stuff. Here too, so yeah, seems to be okay. Cool. We should not be putting there. We should be doing tasks ID, right? ID is at I64. tas where ID is equal to that. Definitely don't want to forget that one. Okay, so now we can update and all that stuff. So let's go back and look at the templating stuff. So this is maybe the last thing that I'll look at. Today's getting quite late now. Essentially, we can create a templates folder, and then we can use either handlebars, which I understand, so that's okay. And then Terra, which I haven't seen before. Which looks like Jinja templates. So I think Jinja templates makes more sense. So we'll do that. Okay, so in the cargo table, we'll do a Dyna templates, get rid of handlebars, just Terra. Load that. And then we need to create a templates folder. Right. And I think this should be configuring that somehow. So Architecture, template to templates. And main must be doing something crazy. Yeah, we're customizing Terra. And that means it is... okay, so that's why it's that way. I see. That makes sense. Okay, I'm going to copy over their base HTML Terra. File base.html Terra. Then we're going to want the index.html Terra, which should look like this. And we probably need the nav HTML Terra as well. File nav Terra. And they also had an error folder for 404. HTML. Okay, so base includes nav. We have a title, the content, and then here we're going to have items and name. Very cool. Let's go to the source and see how they create these things. Template render. Okay, so in our main RS, our index should change from a static string to a template. Which we need to import. do that. Failed to load. Okay, so that dependency that, there we go. I think we should have like a separate repository for the examples so that things are a lot more copy pastable. Okay, cool. So we're compiling main Rust. So instead of this, we need to call template render index. Let's resync that. So the title will be to-do list. Name is some user. Then the items will be, for now, I'm just going to take these results. Function index, get the results, put that in there. This requires a DB connection. Task entity, ideally. Options thing. That's going to fail miserably. Cannot use that, so we'll need a result. Does that work? I don't think that'll work. What we need template is different. If this is a vec 1, 2, 3, fail. This is a result template, which it shouldn't be. It should just be a template. And it still fails to use query templates. You must use template fairing. Okay, so in the main, there is a template. So in the Terra, or customize, add some template. But other than that, there's no config here. It's Catcher's business. Just attach template. And then that fails because template index is inheriting from Terra base. Index extends base. Base includes nav. Okay. That's running. Okay, so we have that. Cool. Let's put task there. Now let's figure out how to make this be real and get these results. So we want, okay, so if we do this, and then this as results, vector of task entities, it's going to say that we need standard result we need to let's clean this up. Okay, we need to have a standard result let's make a copy of this called template result, which is a template this could be a template result. Yeah. Standard result template, or want a rocket response debug error. Can't be right. we have a template here. Okay. You have nothing, which is good. Right, and then if I insert into tasks, task, and then due date, values, finish to do app, 0, and 2023. Oops, almost did the wrong quotes there. 3, 11, 15, 0, 0. Oh, we're already past that. Whatever. Let's just do a date. Execute. Finish to do. Okay. Finally got somewhere. Can be something to be said how the Rails demonstration finishes in 15 minutes. And here I need 3 hours literally to get it to not even be an app yet. That's quite amazing. Yeah. So let's have a form action. Yeah, what do I want to do with that JSON API? Or what else do I want to do? I'm not sure. I think I got this set up. So I know more or less what's required now. And at this point, now I can do some JavaScript or, just finish up this thing and everything works. It's too late to try Leptos now, but maybe I'll try it in another stream. But yeah, there's a few things that I really don't like about this in terms of like the development which is the errors that we get from the compiler are not always that good, especially when this await stuff, this await deals is really weird. And it does seem that the examples, they do mention that there's some sort of bug with SQLX, which is why they can't do something. And I think that's a little old or really new. One of the two. So hard to know which one. But yeah, if you go here, you can see it says there's these two bugs. We can't use either fetch one. So I guess since I'm using fetch one, that means that issue has been solved, and means that perhaps they should update these, or I should send a pull request that updates them. Regardless, the lack of types and the fact that things are like unknown makes it really difficult, right? Like, so this result is unknown. I don't like that, right? And you can kind of change that with this. I think you do that, then bind, ID. And now we have an SQLite query result, right? So like when you're using macros, the IDE is unable to kind of access that result. So when you're developing, you kind of want to stay away from macros as much as possible. The fact that this does the query in compile time is really good. So if I do like due date, blah, 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 right? Little boneheaded mistake there. Should not compile, or it does compile. Okay, never mind. So that is not what I expected. If that is wrong, this should not compile. Or no, because it's not the macro. I see. So if you want that feature, you got to use the macro. And then that is a problem. So if I do a check, so IDX, that I would really like to fail at compile time. Let's do that one more time. Does this fail? Okay, this fails too. The macro thing that I want from SQLX does not work. Possibly. Even though here it works. Let me try the delete. So the delete is a macro here. Okay, from tasks where ID. Okay, so we can run here. Everything's good. Now, if I say IDX is 1 there, somewhere. Okay, never mind. So I thought this would be doing something, because if I don't have the database URL, it was failing. Yeah, it's like failing. Now that could be an SQLite thing, right? Like SQLite, not exactly the most strict database. So maybe that's it. If I set the database URL, you run it, it should run. Right? Delete. Function delete is never used, and update is never used. So maybe that has something to do with it. Update result is never used. I think that's true. Let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of this thing, just so that we have no errors. JSON and value. Let's get rid of those. Now we have a completely clean code base where everything is used. And if this was cool, I could have a bug in my query and it fails to compile. So maybe yeah, never mind. It doesn't do that. Okay, so now it's proper thing, and that works. This should not work. Yeah, so there's a syntax error there. And then if I, Butterfinger the name, that also does it. So this is cool, right? Very, very cool. I want that. That's where it's at, right? Like, that's the cool thing. But I can't use it here. Or using it was very, very complicated and not super intuitive. So that's a little annoying. I'd really like to be able to use those macros, but it means that when you do that, now stuff isn't now you don't know what your results are, right? That is super unfortunate. And it could be just a temporary IntelliJ thing, right? That could be a thing. And then as they add more support for the things, that might be a little bit better. But it's not ideal. But it's getting there, so I don't know. It's okay. It's definitely not as fast as Ruby or Python to develop, but it does help you catch errors at compile time, right? Like, there's probably no chance of getting an error at runtime, except for maybe this null due date with something that might not work here. I added this as an option, but this was still just a regular string. So that could be something that happens at runtime, but otherwise, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. So yeah, I think that was worthwhile to do and struggle and figure it all out. So hopefully anyone who's watching and watched through the whole slog might have learned something about things. We may or may not be using SQLX and Rust in the future, but now I have a good kind of like understanding about what it's like and where the deficiencies are. It's definitely more Haskell-y than Scala-y in that sense, but not too far off. These are all very, very close languages, so kind of cool, and hopefully very fast. But you need a benchmark to really know that for sure. But anyway, so it's 1 a.m. so I'm going to sign off here, and I will see you next time. No concrete plans of what we're doing next time, but I'll announce it in our Twitter profile. Try to keep things a little more educational here, I think, going forward. So if that's interesting, stay tuned for the next live stream, and I'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.